there's volcanic earthquakes happening in Iceland or Greenland. And they've evacuated a whole village, from my understanding. And there's already been a lot of ground separation and various things. So, I mean, we're literally seeing this stuff come to pass every day. And so it's pretty major. All right. I haven't figured out where we're going to go exactly in the coming days, as far as for the next few weeks till Christmas. We may just bounce around. But this came to me yesterday while I was sitting down there at the camp, and I was waiting on a concrete truck. And as I sat there waiting and looking, there was a man down the street, and I guess he was doing his exercise. And he walked out of his house, and he literally walked from where I'm at to back there to the sound stage, just about 25, 30 feet. And he did this for an hour and 20 minutes. Back and forth. At first I thought he's mowing his yard, and he turned around and I thought, he's not pushing a lawnmower. And just on and on and on. And it began to click in my mind how a lot of people's lives, as far as they walk with God, is they never get beyond a certain point. You see, instead of walking around the street and seeing the community, I mean, literally, when I drove by his house leaving yesterday, there's a trail. And he never got off his yard. He back and forth for an hour and 20 minutes. He could. I don't know why. But we don't want to go there because that's not part of the message. There may have been some reason, but what it made me think about was how much people miss out when they start walking with God. Do they ever get beyond the bare basics? Or do they just stay on this little routine over and over and over again? Because you can miss the whole world if you don't get out and experience some things. And God didn't call you to be repetition. He called you on a journey. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. And I want to look at some of the things where Jesus called his disciples. And I didn't have my pen with me, and I didn't mark them, so I'm going to have to look for them. I've got some of them kind of marked. But when he called them, he would look at them and he would call them to come follow him. I know I had this marked somewhere. First disciples, verse 18 in chapter 4. You see, now as Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, cast a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets. And he called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. The contrast to people doing a ritual with God every week is when Jesus called his disciples, he called them for a journey, not to stay where they were, but to follow him wherever he led them. And I want you to think about that today, because you've not been called to do some religious activity over and over. You've been called to go on a journey with God. And in other words, every day should be part of that walk as he leads you through life and into situations. Because the disciples, they left what they were doing, they began to follow him. But they had no idea what was in front of them, but they knew they couldn't stay where they were and follow Him. And so He carried them around the Galilee area and into various places, and He showed them miracles. He showed them various attitudes. He showed them various things where people responded. He challenged them to grow in their faith. They went out on the sea in a boat. Jesus is sleeping up there in the part. The waves and began to beat upon it. They got scared. He stands up. He calms the sea. It just quits. But they were on a journey. And I think what God was speaking to me about yesterday was how many people never leave that little area in their life. I got saved and I'm just going to go to church. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to learn a little bit, and then I'm going to go home and go on with my life, and then just back and forth every Sunday, and miss out on the journey of walking with God every day. Because you see, He's got things He wants to teach you, not only in church or Sunday school or Bible study, but He wants to teach you wherever you're at. And that's what He did with me yesterday. I was just sitting there waiting on a concrete truck, praying and talking, and I just see that, and I thought, man, I've seen people in their walk with God do the same thing. Here, back and forth, never leaving, wear a trail out, and yet their faith never grew. You see, in my experience with the Lord in the past 41 years, I've seen men and women who had been saved for 40 years not have as much faith as I did when I'd been saved 2 years. Because they never went beyond that little spot. They never allowed themselves to ever experience anything by going out and learning faith and stepping out with and doing something. They didn't go on mission trips. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't want to do anything. All they wanted to do is just the same old thing over and over. And I thought, how sad it is to miss out on a wonderful journey, and yet how their faith wouldn't grow because they never allowed God to show them anything other than their little old world. Now, like Rhonda said, maybe the law had told him he couldn't. I don't know. But as a Christian, you don't have anything holding you back but yourself. These disciples said, we're going to follow you, and we have no idea where you're going, but we're going to go with you. They stepped out in faith, and they saw things, experienced things, and you can too. You don't have to be called to be a missionary to do that. You're called to be a disciple, which means a follower of Christ. And you can never leave Morris County and yet experience the same things that missionaries experience all around the world. Because we have people everywhere. But as you face encounters in your life, ask God to show you, why am I doing it? Why am I facing this illness? Why am I facing this? Why has this individual come to me with their situation and they want me to pray with them? Well, because God wants you to minister and be a part of it and to join that. And as you do that, you learn to have faith. Henry Blackaby always called that spiritual markers. And a spiritual marker was when God teaches you something, you put that up there in that little brain of yours and you hold on to it because there's a reason why He taught you that. And then when you're facing another situation, you can look back and you can say, God took care of this little situation here. I think He can do it again. And you grow in that faith because you let Him work. But if all you think that your journey with God is going to church or going to a prayer meeting or whatever, you'll never truly know who God is. You've got to get out and experience Him. You've got to run into some difficult situations. You've got to see Him deliver you through some problems that you didn't know how they'd be happening. You got to look. And if you'll look, you'll find out there's a lot in front of you. Some of the mission trips we've taken through the years, and anyone in here that's ever went on mission trips, there's several things happen. You go to bless somebody and you come home blessed, because they will bless you because you win. And you'll come back saying, feeling kind of a little bit selfish, you think, I went to help them and they helped me. Because I grew in my faith, I saw what they did, and next thing you know, you're ready to go again and do something. And a lot of your mission trips are simple. Some you may be building something or helping them with that. We've went on mission trips where we did vacation Bible schools and doing stuff like that and helping various people that. Going down here to the camp can be a mission trip. That's what I say every day when I go. I'm on mission. I'm going down here to help because somebody is going to be blessed because we're pouring this concrete. And it helps somebody to come and be able to walk on something and park and get close. There's going to be kids there. He's talking about how some of this parking lot's going to be used for games this summer, that he's going to mark it off with pickleball. I like the pickles. I don't know about the pickleball, but anyway, he's trying to find things because the camp's growing so much. He said, I can't send them all to the swimming pool because I don't need more than 50 in the swimming pool at a time. And he said, I've got 500 kids. He said, that would be 10 hours of swimming. I can't do that. So he's having to find other reasons. So all that means is going down there and helping and stuff, or wherever, whether you go. Donica's brother wanted to volunteer. I said, well, I don't know. I put him in touch with the Gideons. Every Sunday morning he's going to the jail ministry and ministering there to jail ministry with the Gideons. He's loving it. And he just said, man, I just want to do something. What can I do? And I put him in touch with my cousin, and Noel is a Gideon, and he's just loving it. He said, I'm meeting all kinds of people. But see, he made himself available. There was something for him to do. He's doing that, and he's blessing, and God's growing him. But he had to get out of his little old trail from here to here and expand that journey and get off of that. Go to the side. But that's what the disciples were called to do. And that's what you and I are called to do. And I know everybody's looking forward to the rapture and us getting out of here, but we've got a lot of things in front of us that we need to be prepared for. You need to get out of the drudgery. Because if you stay on that same, I would have been bored to death. I mean, an hour and 20 minutes looking at the same thing. I might as well have been on a treadmill, and that would have lasted about a minute and a half. I mean, I don't mind walking some, but I want to go see something. My feet won't let me walk a lot, but I don't want to see the same. I don't want to see my yard. 30 feet of it anyway. But I don't want my walk with God to involve just 30 feet of life either. I mean, the things I've experienced in the past 41 years were because I was willing to go. My wife was willing to go. My kids were willing to go. And now there's been times we've been scattered all the way around the world, and still some of us are scattered in Madrid, Spain, but I'm okay with that. And but I've watched God do things with me that I never dreamed He would. So I don't know about you. I was never cut out to be one of these assembly line workers that did the same thing over and over. I could never do that. I had to move around. I got to see something different. And that's allowed me in my life with the Lord to go and do and see. And I hope you never get yourself trapped in thinking that coming here on Wednesday, coming here on Sunday is all there is to walking with God, because it's not. It's so much more than that. All right, well, let's turn on over a little bit. And you can look at some of the things here that they got to experience in chapter 8. The first section of Scripture, Jesus cleanses a leper in the centurion's faith. So they saw that. Peter's mother-in-law was sick. Jesus healed her. They got tested about learning and stuff and understanding that following Jesus would be a cost. A guy comes and wants to follow him, and he said, well, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said, follow me and allow the dead to bury their dead. And he got in. I mean, it sounded harsh, didn't it? Let the dead bury the dead? You don't have time to let him go? That wasn't the thing. What Jesus was saying, because he saw into the man's heart, the man wasn't willing to walk away from anything. He didn't really want to follow him. He wanted to voice that, but he didn't really want to go. So he came up with an excuse. And that's where a lot of people are in their life. Jesus, I need you to use me somewhere. Well, I need you to go over here and help these people over here. I don't like those kind of people, God. I need somebody more like me. God, won't you use me there? He said, I got a place for you right over here. Yeah, but you know, God, you made me the way I am, so you ever heard that? God made me this way? That's a lie. We make ourselves that way. God's trying to make us into what He really wants us. You got to be willing to go. I had a friend I worked with, and boy, he was a heathen. Me and him we walked pretty good together, and we both got saved. And he was telling me one day, he said, "Man, I got excited." He said, "I was going to go on a mission trip to California," and he said, "I got to thinking about all the radical homosexuals out there," and he said, "God, I'll witness to anybody out there, but I don't want to mess with those homosexuals." Guess who he got to minister to? And he fell in love because he said, "I learned to love them for who they were and not judge them for their sin." He said, "They were sinners just like anybody else, but I learned to love them and realized they needed the truth just like anybody else." So he came back with a whole new attitude. Now, he didn't want to go out there and do that. He wanted to witness to somebody more like him. That was a scary thought for me because I knew who he was. But, you see, God carried him in a new place. But he had to be willing to go. He had to get off of that path. And he had to make some sacrifices. And when he came back, he was a changed individual. Just like any of us are. And it's not always easy until you do it a few times and you see what God's doing. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes because you realize, hey, God's got this. God's got this. I can go and I can do this. And that's what excites me. You see, if I'd stayed on my little path like this, I never would have started this church. But God had worked me for 20 years, preparing me to come back here and start this church 20 years ago. But see, I had to learn to follow Him because I didn't want to come back to Omaha, especially where He was bringing me. Because I knew that church. And I said, I couldn't understand. I said, why do you want me there, God? I'll go do anything else, but I don't want to come. And I said, and He made it evident, this is the path we're going to take. But He brought me to First Baptist Omaha. And I'd had years there. I knew the struggles. I knew what they had been. I'd been a deacon there. They ordained me to preach. They licensed me to preach. I'd preach there. I knew the battle they went. And I couldn't figure out why God was bringing me there. But He brought me there to start this church and to bring some people out of there because a lot of them were exactly like that man in that yard. Their journey was just about this long. And they couldn't understand why I wanted to do something different. They couldn't understand what God was doing in my life. And I'm not being critical of them, I mean, but I am, I guess. That's where they were at. It was the same thing over and over. And for 20 years I'd watched two preachers try to get them to move beyond. And when God brought me here, when I look back on it, it was to start this church. Because He wanted to do something different and expand it. And we've been going now nearly 20 years. And it upsets some people. But I don't want us to ever become entrapped with thinking this is all we've got. God's got a lot in front of us. Do you believe that? Can God use you? The question is, will you let Him use you? God can use anybody, but you've got to make the decision to get out of that little path and walk a little further. Because, Rhonda, I can't get over what you said. And I never thought about it, but He may not. But we have no restraints, okay? Well, he may have had a legal restraint there. Maybe I'll be just glad he was walking. But we have nothing to hold us back but ourselves. And let me ask you this. Do you want to stand before God one day and then give an account why you weren't and go any further in your faith? And you know, you got to say, well, God, I didn't think you could do it. I loved you, but I didn't think you could use me or take me through that. I don't know about you, but I don't think I want to stand in front of a holy, righteous God and say, I didn't believe you could do it. Not when you've showed me so much. I may not want to go. I promise you, I didn't want to preach. I didn't want to move from here. I didn't want to go to seminary. God put up with a lot for me because I didn't want to do a lot of those things. Matter of fact, I wouldn't go to Southwestern because it was too big of a school. I said, I'll go to some little old bitty school. So I go to Jacksonville, and the classes were 7 and 8 people, sometimes 3 and 4. I said, I can do this. So I'm down there for 2 semesters when God brought a guy out of Alaska, put him in Southwestern. I got to know him through his mother, who I was working with, and he told me about a program at Southwestern. And I had come to a place in my life where I realized, hey, I wasn't as dumb as I thought I was. I could actually do a little bit of that, so I got interested. Come to find out I could go to that big, massive seminary out there. I'd never been there. I didn't know how big it was. But in my mind, this is a gigantic school for the super smart. Come to find out, I could do it. But I had to let God pull me and take me. And then I'd have to surrender to that and let Him do it. And then I was amazed because I found out I could get out of my little path and go further and further, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger over the past 41 years. Because I was born and raised right over in this little town called Naples. Lived on property that belonged to my great-grandfather. And my circle was from Marietta and Bryan's Mill to about Rocky Branch, because I couldn't hang out in Dangerfield. Daddy didn't let you go that far south. I could go to Mount Pleasant, and you didn't go to DeKalb. So that was my circle for years. And I was scared to death to move off from here. Because everybody I knew lived right here. And God had to stretched me out. When I look back on it now, I'm glad He did. So I'm looking at Carla. How big is your circle when you grew up? Y'all gotta understand, I grew up with her brothers. I know we were very limited. And our family all lived here and scared to death to go any further. But I'm glad I got to now. You've got to go see them grandbabies, don't you? But just think about how many people never get beyond that little old short trip. And all they know, that they never know how much they're missing. I don't want you to miss out on this stuff. Because God's got a lot to teach you. But you got to be willing to go. And let me tell you, I'll testify, if you'll go with Him, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. You will not be ashamed. You will be thankful that you could go. Places to volunteer, there's thousands of places to work. Hundreds of things you can do. Right over in Naples, there's a food ministry that you can be a part of. Oh, you name it, there's some place you can work and meet some different people and be a part of various things. You can be a part of what we do, some of our outreach and various things. Just don't get caught up in just wanting to come on Sunday and get fed spiritually and then go home and not do anything else. Reach out. Do something else. Study. Ask God to show you something. Ask Him to grow your faith. When He called these disciples, He didn't grab them up and take them to Europe. He started out in His little circle and He just kept broadening the circle a little bit more, because these four, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, their circle was right around the Sea of Galilee, around Capernaum and that area right up there on the northeast side of the Sea of Galilee. They'd seen the other. They'd probably been to Tiberias a few times and various things. But I'm talking about their circle was not much bigger than mine and Carla's and some of y'all's, because the Sea of Galilee is only about 8 miles wide and about 16, 18 miles long. And that was their world. But they'd never seen God heal anybody. They'd never seen the miracles until they got with Jesus. And when they got with Jesus, a whole new world opened up to them. And they traveled and they saw what all God could do. And they were amazed at it. And the last thing is Matthew was called over in chapter 9. He says, as Jesus went from there, He saw a man called Matthew sitting in a tax collector's booth. And He said to him, follow me. And he got up and followed Him. Matthew writes that about himself because a tax collector was not very popular then any more than they are today. They were, as a matter of fact, would have been even less popular because nobody paid them for their job. They were allowed to collect taxes plus whatever they thought you should pay. So in other words, if the Roman government wanted $10 from you, he would take $10 plus whatever his fee would be. And if he looked at your assets and decided you should pay $20, he charged you $20. If he looked at you and thought you was pretty wealthy, or maybe you made him mad or said something, maybe yours would be $50 this year. The Roman government got 10 of it. You see, they weren't very popular. But Matthew walked away from his living, his family, people he knew, and the lifestyle he had to follow Jesus. Because of that, you have the genealogy of Jesus Christ in the beginning of the book of Matthew. Because one thing a tax collector was good at was knowing where you came from and who your relatives were. His lifestyle prior to this walk allowed him to make records of Jesus' genealogy so that you would know who he is today. No other disciple recorded the genealogy except Matthew. No one else. Luke was a physician. He was not part of the original 12. The book of Luke focuses on the miracles, especially the healings, because his lifestyle and medical, he was amazed about what God had done and what God was doing. Mark was a young boy who worked under Peter, and he wrote that gospel based upon what he saw and heard Peter. He was the first one to record anything. And then John wrote his gospel where you know the plan of salvation and dealing with God's redemptive assets. So each one of them brought something with them from their past. But every one of them walked away from their past so that they could go into the future. And they saw wonderful things. So when you find yourself doing the same thing over and over and you get bored with God, think about that man walking that little path every day and think, I want to go a little bit further. I want to see something a little different. Randall and Sarah took off. See, today's Wednesday. When did y'all leave? Last week? Y'all left last Wednesday on your little trip. Look at the colors. Why didn't they just sit around here and wait for them to come down here? They'd been up there before. They knew it was pretty. So they drove. Took a day off. When you know what's out in front of you, it's a little easier to go. So just think. The God that you serve has got a lot more beautiful things in front of you. He wants you to get out of that little path and go see them. But you got to be willing to get up and go. Okay? That's your lesson. Get up and go. And don't go on the same path over and over and over again. Try something new so that you can know the God that you serve. And then watch and see what He's doing. Do you believe all these things I've preached on Sunday is going to come to pass? I know they're going to come to pass, and I think we're going to see them. I may be wrong, but I know they're coming one day. But everything lines up. I hope if I'm wrong, that instead of coming at the mid-tribulation, we go tomorrow. But we're going to see God work and do some wonderful things. So get right with God. Get off that little old path and learn something new. And you'll be amazed. All right? All right, let's bow our heads and we'll pray and let you go. Father, it's good to know that you've got a journey planned for each and every one of us. It's good to know that you want to show us new things about you. You want to show us your character. You want to grow our faith. You want to grow our understanding. You want to grow the way we look at people. But in everything that happens in our life, if we walk with you, you'll make something good come from it. It may be a hard lesson. We may not like it. But there's something we can learn each and every day. And I pray that you just open our eyes to see that. and that we grow in that faith. And ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. We will not have a Wednesday night service next week. It's Thanksgiving, so do your own thing. You will be required to cook for yourself next Wednesday night. Oh. But I will cook for you on the 29th. We're going to have fried chicken, fried okra, mashed potatoes, purple hull peas. You're not going to be